Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Crossing the Touchline. Columbus Crew taking on the San Jose Earthquakes this week. But what better way to preview this match than with MLS Season Pass analyst Kyndra de St. Aubin? Kendra, how are you?
I'm great. I cannot complain. As you stated before we started, another day in paradise. We get to talk about the game we love, and so it's a good day.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a good one. It should be not raining on Saturday. I know it's supposed to rain in the morning, but I don't think it's supposed to rain at game time. So that'll be a plus. But coming into this match, Columbus coming off of that 1-0 loss against Inter Miami, um Benjamin Kramaski with a wonderful header. Just what'd you take of that game before we get into San Jose?
Well, first of all, Columbus Crew were the better team. And I don't think there's many times where you say that against Inter Miami, regardless of, what the score line looks like at the end of the day. But Columbus Crew did exactly what they came in there to do, aside from score the goals and execute in the final third of the field. So that's always disappointing. But when you listen to Wilfried Nancy talk after the game and in his media availability this week, and we talked to him yesterday, he was happy about how they played. So it's hard to, it's like that's mixed bag, right? You're happy about how you played, you were the better team, but you didn't come away with the result. How often do we say that in soccer, though? That is like the name of the game in soccer. Is the only game where you can dominate in every factor and still lose by not scoring goals. So I took away from that game that Columbus Crew played exactly like we know they can play. They
Hmm.
frustrated and flustered Miami. They just didn't capitalize and execute inside the box. And I think that's what was just incredibly disappointing because every other aspect, it was like they did what they came there to do, aside from walk away with 3 points.
Yeah, definitely. And being there at that game, it was a little frustrating because Daniel Gazdag had many opportunities. Max Arson had opportunity. Rossi, Jason Rosero, guys who can finish, and just not being able to put the ball in the back of the net was frustrating. Not only for the 60,000 plus that were there, but for people like me who've been covering the team for a long time that know that these guys can put the ball in the back of the net. But Columbus is known for their possession heavy style under head coach Wilfried Nanzi. How do you see that playing out against San Jose's approach this week?
Well, it was interesting talking to Nancy yesterday as well about that because I think, especially when you look at this San Jose Earthquakes team under Bruce Arena more specifically, and the weapons that he has at his disposal, and now acquiring Dewan Jones, which is kind of funny because he'll be available or should be available to choose. Should Bruce Arena choose to play him, maybe he'll have all the tricks of the trade of Wilfred Nancy and what he's trying to do. But at the same time, I just think that when you look at how Bruce Arena likes to play, it has been very fast paced, but it hasn't been the same way that we've seen in the past with other coaches, where this man marking all over the field. And I think it's going to be very much of similar to. I'm trying to think of another opponent that maybe Columbus has played that is similar. And when it's a Western Conference team and you only play them, one time a season, if that,
Yeah.
it's always a different challenge. But for me, I don't think Wilfred Nancy focuses too much on the opponent. He very much so, as you've heard, I'm sure, time and time again, focuses on what they need to do well. And that in and of itself will frustrate the opponent. And again, just capitalize on your chances. You're at home. You have this opportunity to find ways to score. I do think the wide spaces is an area that Columbus Crew can attack and exploit. But then at the same time, you have a player like Christian Espinoza, who technically is a wide player, but can cut in and be so goal dangerous. And now you've got Arango inside the box. You've got Martinez inside the box. You've got all these weapons that Espinoza has to serve to find service to or combine with as he's trying to attack. So I think if you're on the outside and you're Arston or you're Mo Farsi, you're going to have to just be cognizant of that you may want to get forward and attack, but you just have to remember that Espinoza is going to quickly go out the other direction, and so minimize that threat going the other way in those transition moments.
Columbus seems to be very fluid in the final third, also, obviously. So, what would Bruce Arena, coming from the San Jose approach, need to do tactically to adjust to cope with that fluid movement, especially with the front three of Diego Rossi, Jason Rosero, and Daniel Gazdag?
Well, and it's interesting too because when we talked to Nancy yesterday, because I was asking him about the wide spaces, and he said, "But what he loves more about the team this year, and now that they've been with the team a while, those couple
Hmm.
players, Farsi and Arston, that they have more fluidity and more freedom to kind of roam and to kind of find their space inside, to drift outside. It's not just they're these wide players that are." serving the ball inside or cutting inside and being goal dangerous. So if you're Bruce Arena, you're going to have your hands full because you have this fluid nature of this attack for Columbus Crew. And then we're not forgetting about, but you haven't even mentioned Darlington Nagbe, which
Yeah.
in a sense, I know he's not part of that front three, but he is really the metronome or the piece that makes everything go on both sides of the ball. And for some reason, he draws the most fouls, which is crazy because as a six, you're normally committing the fouls. You're not drawing them, but he is so smart and intelligent in his movement and the way he positions his body and puts himself in situations to be that sort of player that can draw the foul when he's under pressure rather than just turning the ball over. He draws the foul and keeps possession and creates an opportunity going forward. So if you're the Columbus Crew and you're Bruce Arena trying to exploit that, you're going to have your hands full because their center midfielders are going to have to be spot on as far as San Jose. And Shakiris has really, to me, developed into a wonderful player for them. Coming out of the homegrown system, I think especially in that last match, I know they lost the game and they're on a bit of a tough run here. But in general, I think he has given some of these players the freedom and the confidence to do what they could do on the ball, to create, to goal, be goal dangerous. So again, for me, it's saying for San Jose, it's the transition game. Just being
Hmm.
smart when you're choosing to go forward, how many numbers you're throwing forward, because we know that Columbus Crew will hit you right on not necessarily on the counter, because what does Wilfred Nancy say all the time? You can slow down the game to speed it up.
Yeah.
And so I think Columbus's Crew version of a counterattack and transition is different than most teams' version of a counterattack. He's okay with having 34 passes to find an opportunity, but he's also okay with two or three. It's
Yeah.
really about reading the game. So if you're Bruce Arena and Wilfred Nancy, I think it's going to be a bit of a chess match. I'm kind of excited to see how this one's going to play out.
San Jose 4 points in their last 5 matches. Obviously, coming off that 5-3 loss to Kansas City. Uh, the front, I mean, obviously we have Chicho Arango, Joseph Martinez, Hernan Lopez. That just those three right there alone are very technical, very gifted. What went wrong, and how can they kind of ignite the fire?
Well, it was defense, honestly. I mean, because there weren't lacking chances, and you score 3 goals in a game, you're usually assuming that you're going to find a way to get a result, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're at home. And also, I kind of view the last goal um, that they got scored on them by Kansas City as sort of like an own goal and not an own goal, excuse me, an empty netter in
Hmm.
hockey, where you're throwing all the numbers forward, so then you're exposed a little bit. What can happen? Penalties inside the box, giving up chances, whatever it might be. Like you're exposed a little bit. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with their attack right now. And I think Bruce Arena has that firing on all cylinders. And honestly, I think it's so much about confidence. So for me, it's about the back line and the defense once again. And
Hmm.
that kind of has been the story for San Jose Earthquakes for a while, regardless of who the coach is that you're trying to fit these pieces together to get things going on the attack, which clearly they have with some of the pieces that they've acquired as well. But I think in just cleaning it up defensively, because it felt like a couple of the goals, they're standing around looking at each other, going, "How did that happen?" After the fact, after the goal was scored. So I just think it's just a matter of them finding a way defensively to lock it down. But and I don't know if you feel this way, but I truly do feel like confidence is such a huge piece. And I know they're professionals
Oh
and they're
yes.
like for the most part grown men, but I can't tell you how many times I've talked to different coaches and different staff members for clubs, if it's an assistant coach or a goalkeeping coach, whatever it might be. And they still emphasize that if a guy is feeling good about what he's doing, how different his play is going to be in every action on the field. And I do think the San Jose Earthquakes team feels like there is a confidence and a solidarity about them. We talked to Greg Berhalter, a couple weeks ago before they played Miami. And
Hmm.
just even that team, the confidence that he's giving them, the style, there's a clear way they want to play. All those things breed confidence in these guys, and it can completely change how you approach a game against any opponent in this league. And I think that's what Bruce Arena has kind of done. He's always been a great coach in that sense.
Oh
Everywhere he
yeah.
goes, he finds a way to win and get the guys believing in themselves and what he's trying to do. So I think that's going to be a big piece for the San Jose team, but they need to clean it up on the back line.
And I think the same thing goes for Wilfred Nancy. When he started with Columbus in 2023, you saw players start to be more confident, start to flourish more under the 3-5-2-1 or 3-5-3 or 3-4-3 system that Wilfred Nancy runs. It's just and one thing that Wilfred Nancy always he wants the team to make mistakes,
Yes.
right? So it's always just a learning process. But
Well,
Uh,
I think also it shows confidence in the guys that he's willing to play them in all these different positions. I mean, he
yeah,
wants each
definitely.
guy to be able to play or 2, 3 positions.
Oh
You're
yeah.
not going to ask Daniel Gazdag to play goalkeeper, but like you look at Zawadski, you look at some of these guys, how they've been, and that in of itself, if I was a player, I'd go, wow, my coach thinks I can play 3 different positions well enough at the professional level. That just gives you confidence, to or
Hmm.
anywhere you are on the pitch. So I think that even just in the mindset gives you as a player confidence that your coach has that belief in you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, if you had to pick one battle on the field that will kind of define this game, what would it be?
Um, Man, that's a tough one. If I have to think about it, and we haven't talked to Bruce Arena yet, so I don't know exactly, like the how he's going to play as far as going into this match or the
Yeah.
availability. But if I had to look at just on I honestly, I think I would go back to the wide spaces because I think inside the box when you've got attacking players like a Gazdag and you've got center backs, you're always going to have that battle. And to me, it might be a challenge for the center backs of Columbus Crew to figure out a way to mark and keep track of Arango and Martinez if they're both playing. And then you have Shakiris coming up through the middle, and you have Espinoza, and you mentioned Hernan Lopez. I do think that that can be a challenge, but I also think that it's going to be the wide spaces. It's really going to be, and I feel like I say this every week because of the way fullbacks and wingbacks are used nowadays on
Yep.
teams that it's really going to be who is on the front foot at the beginning of that battle because you are going to force the opposite player on the other team to stay home more and eliminate them from the attacking space. So if you have a Mo Farsi that's consistently, oh well, let me think. No, Espinoza's on the right, so whoever's on your left hand side. So let's say it's Max Arston,
Yep.
or if Gazdag starts sort of on the left hand side of the attacking front three, but we know he can drift in and be a threat in the box. But
Hmm.
let's say it's your left hand side and it's their right hand side, which is usually Espinoza. I think it's that could really tell the tale of the game as far as who's on the front foot early and forcing the opposition's player to stay home more defensively, because then you're just eliminating a key piece from the attack. And when you look at Columbus Crew, the players that get the most progressive passes or receptions, forward, receive the most passes in a progressive nature are your outside players. And so I think there is an aspect to Wilfred Nancy wanting them to receive the ball in certain areas and higher up the field. And so if Espinoza is more goal dangerous and more of a threat and Farsi has to stay home, I think that's going to be an interesting battle to keep an eye on. And they both have like such a ridiculous engine and an IQ and like reading of the game, that it's
Yeah.
not just this physical battle of like who's going to get up and back more. It's more who's intelligently picking the moments to exploit that opportunity.
For Columbus, obviously that 1-0 loss, the first loss of the season against Miami, coming back to Columbus now at lower.com field, which is widely known as a very tough place to play due to the atmosphere that's created. It was the 1-0 loss kind of a wake-up call for Columbus, would you say? Because they did enter that match unbeaten in, I think, 8 matches. What would they need to do to kind of get back to their winning ways and kind of still fight for, I know it's early, but fight for a top spot in the East, let alone the Supporter Shield?
I don't think it's a wake up call. I mean, and I don't want to say especially because it was also against Miami and
Yeah.
also, where you had an XG that was like off the charts compared to what Miami had. And it was just one of those days where they capitalized on their moment. And I think that also can stem from your coach and from Wilfred Nancy. I don't think this team is stressed at all. I don't think that they're like nervous now because they didn't find a way to win that game. I think that this was just another game in this league where anybody can win on any given day, and that's how soccer rolls. And I do think that Columbus Crew will find themselves right up near the top, if not at the top of the Eastern Conference. And the East is tough, right? I mean, so I'm not
Yeah.
saying that lightly, but in the conversation for Supporter Shield or in the conversation for MLS Cup come the end of the day. I don't think it's a wake up call. I just think it's, he went back to the not the drawing board, but he went back to the finishing in the final third
Yep.
execution in his drills this week. I mean, it was interesting talking to him yesterday because he said it was more about the emotional aspect inside the box, not the actual technique, not the actual like quality of your finishers, because he doesn't doubt anybody's ability, but it was more about like the emotions in that moment and how you're finding a way to finish and finish in that and finish correctly when all these other things are going on and making the right choice. So to me, I thought it was interesting listening to the drills that he runs to get the guys on that path. So I don't think it's a wake up call. I think it's just back to fundamentals. You gotta
Yep.
finish these chances. They may only come along once in a blue moon, and you have to be able to put that away. So I think I don't think you're going to see Daniel Gazdag miss those chances very often. I don't think you're going to see Jason Russell Rowe miss tap ins. And he said yesterday at training, like Jason Russell Rowe was like hitting all like just like scoring these insane goals. And he was like what you did now was way more difficult than what you missed in the game.
Yeah.
What the heck is going on? So it's more just like in the moment, just mentally being able to in front of 60,000 people under pressure against Miami and some of the best players in the world to be able to finish those chances and kind of have that goal dangerous mentality.
Keys to victory for Columbus this weekend?
Score.
Yeah, that's the big one.
I know that was my expert analysis. Yes. Expert analysis, find a way to finish. My dad used to yell at me when I played, way long time ago because I'm old. But even in college games, he would yell at me, Kyndra, it's the white rectangle. And I'm like, thank you. Thanks, Dad. That's solid advice. Thank you for sharing that. Like I did, like the goal hasn't moved. I know where it is, but I clearly couldn't hit it. Um, I would say for Columbus Crew, it's just remembering that like your style of play. And I love it when Wilfred Nancy talks about slow the game to speed it up because I do think San Jose is going to try to make them play quicker. It's
Yeah,
going to try to make them play quicker, not have 34 passes to find their opportunity. And Wilfred Nancy is so much about controlled. I don't want to say chaos because it's not chaos. It's very like methodical in the way he likes to do things, but it's not a boring methodical. So
right.
just remembering, like, not get caught up in their style of play and it really relying on I think it's more about the center midfielders to dictate that pace of the game. I asked him, I said, is there any one guy on the team then that has to kind of trigger the team of like, when do we slow down the game to speed it up? Who's the one that then makes that decision? Okay, now this is the time to go. This is our opportunity to speed the game back up. And he said, nope, it's on everybody and it's on cues that they see and they read within the match. This is not any one player that I'm relying on to dictate that speed of play and the way the game goes and when we decide to go quickly. So I think for them, it's just relying and just understanding that they have a style of play. They like to slow down the game to speed it up, which means being patient, being simple, and just reading the game cleanly, and not getting caught up in San Jose's sort of frenetic pace that they want to play, and especially on the counter. So that would be my biggest key for them. Which it's actually very hard to talk about Columbus Crew because they
Yeah.
do so many things well, and one of our analysts yesterday, Andres from the Spanish side, he asked Wilfred Nancy this question. He was like, what is the next evolution of this team? Like, you do so
Oh,
many
yeah.
things well. You can play slow, you can play quick, like possession, you can transition, just about everything. And Wilfred Nancy was, I think he first said score goals, but then the next thing he said was, in general, he was saying, there's always something to work on, always something to get, which is like so Wilfred Nancy. And you're just
Of
like,
course.
but it's very hard, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
they're perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but he has them doing so many things well that it's when you think of like, okay, what are the keys for the game for them to get a victory? You can't do much better than you did against Miami,
Mhm.
aside from finish your chances. I asked him, I said, is there any other way you want them to score? Was there something about the way you got into the final third that you didn't like, or was it purely just the execution? And he really said it was purely just the execution. He liked the way the play moved and the way it developed to get into that final third. They just didn't execute on the chances and on the opportunities. There was like nothing else that he didn't really like about the game. He liked the way
Yeah.
they defended. So it's hard to think of a different tip from besides just like be Columbus Crew and you should be able to find a way to win. Not get caught up in San Jose's frenetic pace, and you should be able to find a way to win.
Especially against a very great coach like Bruce Arena. So that's always key. Kendra, you're calling the game. You'll be here in Columbus. Just in general, are you excited to get back to the city?
Yes, I'm very excited. My mom was just asking me yesterday. She's like, "Do you have a favorite stadium?" And I rattled off like, I honestly I don't have a favorite because there are so many great stadiums now, but
Yes.
Columbus Crew and Lower.com Field is absolutely on that list. Cincinnati's on that list, which I'm sure Columbus fans don't want to hear. Allianz Field, where I'm
I
from, is on that
I
list.
I love TQL Stadium. I've been
Yeah,
there so
it's
many times.
beautiful.
It's so nice. I've been to
Yes.
Allianz.
Yeah.
I've been
St.
to
Louis. St.
I
Louis has
haven't
a
been to
beautiful
St.
stadium.
Louis.
Okay, so you
Yes.
gotta get to St. Louis. I mean, there and I'm not slighting anybody I'm not mentioning, but we
Oh
are
yeah,
so
no.
fortunate to cover this league and have so many soccer specific stadiums. And if it's not soccer specific, which I'm not a fan of, but at the same time, like the atmospheres are all great. There's a
Yeah.
reason, why Seattle and Atlanta can still be in a football stadium because they draw the crowds, the energy is great. So I understand, it's like if they can put 40,000 in there, why not? But or 60,000, 70,000, whatever it might be. So I think that I'm excited to get back. And I know I was just telling my mom too. I said, I always love a city where I can be outside, I can walk to things, I can go for a run. Like
Oh,
some of those are my on my checklist when I'm gonna be somewhere. And Columbus, I love going to Columbus and being able to take a run right down by the river on
yep.
a beautiful day. So I'm pumped to get back there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Kickoff this Saturday is at 7:30 p.m. for lower.com field. Kendra will be on the call this weekend. It would be great to see you. And you guys can catch the next episode of Crossing the Touchline next week. Thank you guys for tuning in and have a good one.